So there's a high possibility that me and you don't know each other, but that's okay because today we're gonna fix that. We're gonna fix that. Hello guys, welcome back to my channel. Today I thought it would be fun to do like a nice Q&A session because I realized that if you click on my page, you don't really know who I am other than that I like to read books. And to be honest, there's not really much other than that. But I thought it'd be fun to do a nice little Q&A. There's gnats around here, y'all. But I'm gonna get them. I just bought something for that. Don't worry. But I thought it'd be fun to do a nice little Q&A session. I'm going to split it up into the three main categories about what I want my channel to be about, which is going to be bookish things, lifestyle things, and then movies and TV things. But I really just wanted to do something that would introduce myself and to anyone who's clicking on my channel and just say, hey, you guys, this is who I am. Just a little bit. Where is my phone? I have all the questions written down in my Notion, and I will get to that as soon as I find my phone. That's probably the first thing I need to know about me is that I never know where my phone is, like at all. Y'all, the phone's in my lap the whole time. We're not even going to talk about it. The first group of questions is going to be about bookish things. Which fictional character is most like you? I'm not gonna hold y'all. I don't feel like I read a lot of books about characters that are like me. I feel like the most accurate representation of who I am would maybe be Mallory from the Revive Me series. Her college self at least reminded me a lot of myself in the sense of like she was very focused on school and she was very responsible, but she also was kept to herself. But she also had like a good sense of humor about her. And like once you got to know her, she warmed up to you a lot more. And that's kind of the person that I am. I'm not a very like naturally outgoing person. And I felt Mallory wasn't either, but like once you got her going, then you're like, oh, okay, you're actually kind of silly, you know? So I feel like that's the type of person I am. And I can't really think of any other bookish characters that would remind me of myself unless it's like some crossover between Larkin from the Memento Mori series. Is that accurate? I don't know about that. Only his meticulousness is what I saw in myself and like how he breaks down everything, even though he is just because of like some other type of condition. I kind of just do that naturally, not to the extent that he does, but you know, things like that. And then manga counts as books, right? I don't know, maybe if Sasuke and Naruto had a baby? No. That's not good at all. We're gonna stick with Mallory from the Revive Me series, okay? We're just gonna say it like that. Favorite and least favorite trope. My personal favorite trope is enemies to lovers. I love when they hate each other for an extended period of time. And I'm talking about you could hate each other for like at least a good book or two and I'd still be satisfied. And then they end up as lovers. Oh yeah, I love that. But it has to be true enemies to lovers. Like it needs to be like they want to kill each other. Like I have actually made an attempt on your life. That's my favorite trope. I don't know why, but it just is. I eat that up every time. Not every time though. Not every time because not everyone does it right. I'm not really one for the whole rivals to lovers thing. I kind of just take that as like strangers or like reluctant best friends to lovers because eventually they find out that they like really vibe with this person and that's just kind of what it's giving the whole time. So I'm not really into the whole rivals to lovers thing, but I do like some of them. It's some more like book specific ones. I love when there's only one bed. Like yeah, it's cuddle time. You already know what's gonna happen and you kind of already know how that's gonna end up. And it hits me every time. I'm like, I love when there's only one bed. Like, yeah, sure. Instead of asking for another bed. Oh, the hotel doesn't have a double room. So you gotta sleep on the same bed because they're not sleeping on the floor. They try that and it never works out. They end up getting into bed anyway. Love it every time. Instead of grumpy sunshine, I love when it's grumpy grumpy. Like, I love when there's two grumpy people who are just so sick of everything, so sick of people, they don't want to talk to anybody, and they get together and they only talk to themselves. I just feel like it's such a fun dynamic versus the grumpy sunshine. Maybe because I personally am not a sunshine person and I kind of get exhausted when there's so much sunshine in the book. So maybe that's why. That's so sad, but it's true. A trope that I hate is pregnancy. I always hate that one, whether it's Omegaverse or not, or if it's just like regular and they're having a baby. I don't care. I'm not a kid person, but there have been some books where I'm like, okay, that baby is adorable. Like I love when the baby is already maybe written into the story, or like there's a single dad or something, or one of the characters is kind of taking care of their niece or something, and the child is written into the story and it's a vital part of the story, then I like that. But I'm not fond of like the accidental pregnancy thing. I think there was one book that I read that it was really well done. And I think that's the only one that I've liked about that one so far. But again, I don't usually pick up pregnancy trope books anyway. So maybe that's why. Do you prefer book buying or the library? So here's the thing. I like to think of myself as a beginner collector. I'm a novice collector and I feel like I apply that to all things. Books, movies, albums, or vinyls. I feel like I am a beginner collector because I have seen like how it can amass to a its own personal library, and I feel like I'm not there yet, but I do have a lot of physical media. In terms of book buying, I have no problem with book buying, and I can't really say anything about the people who buy special editions because I don't want special editions, especially if it's a book that I really like. And I'm like, oh yeah, I do want a special edition, but I'm not gonna overkill it and be like, I'm only gonna read this book if I can get the special edition. Like sometimes if I can't do the special edition and it's a book I'm highly anticipating, but I want to maybe wait for the special edition, I'll just read the ebook until I can get my hands on a physical copy that I really like. However, I am a big supporter of the library. I have tons of library books over here that y'all can't see that I am working my way through because I love to check out from the library. I love to check out new books from the library as well because my library tends to get new releases very often, and you can kind of put them on hold before they even get to the library, and you can kind of still keep up if that's what you want to do. I am not someone who keeps up with current reads a lot. I am so behind. I'll read a book from 10 years ago and be like, oh my god, y'all, have y'all heard about this? Never cared a day in my life. And I love renting from the library when I'm not sure about a book, and then even if I like it and I want to buy it, I'll still do that. I always say maybe library first and then buy the book, but I'm not going to hold anybody who's buying books maybe just to buy them as long as they read them. Like if you want to go buy the book, go buy the book, because there are books that I've seen in the bookstore that I didn't know anything about and I just picked it up and bought it because it was something that looked like I might read, and I haven't gotten to it in like a year or two or a couple years, you know. But I do always say support your local library first if you can, because the book prices are crazy out here. And the Barnes & Noble thing about how they aren't allowing any book under $14.99 is crazy. Do you know how many YA books are like 10 bucks? This is gonna cause, I feel like, so many issues, but I don't know. I'm not in the publishing industry, so I don't know if anyone's ever talked about that, but I just think that was crazy. I'm like, what do you mean a book is gonna be under $14.99? Okay, that's probably why they stopped producing mass market paperback, which is a whole nother thing. I'm like, maybe I want a pocketbook. Anyways, support your local library as much as you can, but I know a lot of people actually don't have access to a lot of the libraries. What is a popular genre you've never read? Ironically, I feel like now I have read one of every major genre. I've read the romance, the fantasy, the romantic fantasy, the epic fantasy. I recently read my first horror novel. I read my first non-romance thriller. I think the one genre that I probably won't read is maybe Christian specific literature. No hate to anyone who does. I just don't think I would unless there's like a really good one. You know, are there any really good Christian literature ones? So maybe that's one specific genre that I've never read. And then there's a lot of like specific subgenres that I'll say, because technically Christian literature is just part of like literary fiction or romantic fiction. I guess you would say there's a lot of subgenres that I haven't read. So for example, in nonfiction, I would probably never read anything that's like a political manual. You know, I say that and I am gonna read The Art of War. Is that a political manual? We're not even gonna talk about it. Nope. And then in YA books specifically, I feel like I haven't read a lot of those subgenres. I've read a lot of YA fantasy, I feel like, and a lot of YA romance, but I haven't read YA non-romance thrillers or YA horror or even YA nonfiction. I feel like I almost read a YA nonfiction. It was All Boys Aren't Blue. I may pick that one up again, but I maybe not, because it was, like I said, YA nonfiction. I do love a good YA book, but if it's too juvenile, then I will drop it and be like, oh, this is kind of past my audience, right? But in terms of stuff like history or true crime, I haven't really read those. I actually have read some self-help books in the past. And I think the only genre that I don't read a lot of is sci-fi, which I am trying to remediate because I feel like I just haven't read one that I really, really like. Though, can I say that because some fantasy does cross over with sci-fi? Like, I feel like Vicious is considered both fantasy and sci-fi. So maybe not. Maybe I have read some sci-fi, but I haven't read a lot. What books do you recommend for a non-reader? I feel like I want to break this down by certain genres, right? So my most read genre is, of course, romance. I feel like if you're a first-time romance reader, I highly recommend things that I probably have already been recommended, such as Aristotle and Dante and maybe The Song of Achilles. But I also recommend To Catch a Firefly by Amy Sanders. I just feel like that's such a good starter book for anyone who's wanting to dip their toe in and still wants like a good, nice story with good writing and like emotion. And there's not that much spice if that's not what you're into. But I would steer more towards Aristotle and Dante if you don't want any spice, because that is a YA book, but it is so well written and it's one of my favorite books. I feel like if you want a spicier romance, one that's always recommended is For the Fans by Nyla K. But that might be too much for people, in my opinion, because it was almost too much for me. I still like the book, but it was almost too much for me because I was like, girl, what are we doing out here? But the premise is OnlyFans, so it's kind of a given. It's still a good book though. And then God of Fury by Rena Kent is always recommended. I personally like the Iced Out series by C.E. Reese. I feel like those are good starter books, especially if you want maybe some sports romance. I also think the Fatal Brothers series is a really good starter series if you want more mafia, dark romance, MM romance. And then maybe if you wanted MM fantasy, I would go with maybe the Captive's Prince series, but that one is sort of a heavy read for the first 2 books. And then I know a lot of people also like A Taste of Gold and Iron by Alexandra Rowland, but I actually feel like there is a YA version of that book, or a YA story that's very similar to that book that I prefer more. It's called The Prince of Fortune by Lisa Torreno, but you really can't go wrong with either one of those two. And then keeping on par with things that I've read, because I feel like even as a constant reader, I haven't actually read a lot of books or a large plethora of genres and types of books and authors and whatnot. I feel I may be a bit short-sighted, but if you want romance, I do recommend maybe the Revive Me series. And I have read Summer Romance by Anna Monahan, and it is, I would say, beginner reader friendly, but I actually really didn't enjoy it that much. I think the writing was just okay for me. So maybe if you want fantasy, I know a lot of people like Fourth Wing, but I feel like A Shadow in the Ember might be better in terms of a series, but I've only read the first book. I have read the first 2 books of Fourth Wing, and I really only like the first one anyway. So maybe try A Shadow in the Ember, because I feel like that is pretty beginner friendly for a fantasy. And then if you want a manhwa, y'all know I'm gonna recommend my guys. And if you want a beginner manga, I feel like you really can't go wrong with Death Note. So I'm about to start reading Berserk, and I don't know if I can call that beginner friendly, but I know it's good, so take with that what you will. Has a book ever changed your perspective on life? I feel like books mainly change my perspective of how I see people. There's so many times where I've read a book and I'm so amazed at how an author was able to construe their thoughts and create this world, and uses as such an outlet to throw even myself into their mind and what makes them tick and how their thinking process goes. Because I feel like I'm always intrigued about how different people think, and books, whether that's nonfiction or fiction, always makes me do that. I'm always amazed at like, wow, I never would have thought of this myself. I am amazed that someone else did, and they were able to translate that into a way that I understand. That's the main reason why I've always loved reading, is because you know how people say they can read you like a book? To me, that exactly is what a book is. Like, I am reading this person's thoughts process, the way this person thinks, the way this person moves, the way this person sees life. You know, in terms of changing my own perspective, I think reading the nonfiction books that I have actually enjoyed, such as Franz Kafka's Letters to His Father and Jeanette McCurdy's I'm Glad My Mom Died, gave me a deeper perspective of how parental relationships are. You know how you always maybe complain about your parents, but you still love them? Some people have real issues going on, and I feel like you don't really grasp it until you see it in written form. I've read other nonfiction books like So You Were Publicly Shamed, and that kind of changed my perspective of like, wow, situational awareness is so different for other people. I read that one a long time ago in college, and that was one of the main books that stuck. In terms of fiction books, I will say reading more Black books recently, as like someone who lives as a Black female in America, reading Black books like Razor Blade Tears, or maybe even Pretty, as someone who has really never read predominantly Black books before, and like me dipping my toe in very recently, maybe like a couple months ago. Actually, I can't say that, because my first dip in was actually a Black romance that I actually really did like. It was called They Call Him Nas, and that one's actually a really good book if anyone wanted to read that one. I feel like that's also a good beginner book as well. But reading other people's perspective of the Black experience, I feel like is always very interesting, because I can see how other people live, and sometimes I'm like, dang, you live just like I did. But a lot of people have it a lot rougher than I do, and so I'm always like, yeah, I've seen that happen, even if it's never happened to me. And then even reading like non-Black books and just reading like regular fiction books, which I feel like I need to read more of, like I want to get more into Asian literature. It's always interesting seeing the different lives of different demographics and different ethnicities and nationalities, which is why I like to try to at least diversify my reading, even if I'll always default back to my main squeeze. You know, it's always interesting to see and compare the different lives of other people who may have experienced the same thing that I did, but in different ways. Eventually, I feel like as humans, we're always talking about the same thing, but we're always talking about it from different perspectives. And I think that's what books do for me as well. Y'all, why did my mic just cut out for like a whole portion of my video? But that's okay. But I was just saying that I wanted to read more books that may actually change my perspective. And what are some books that you guys have read that's changed your perspective? Like, has there ever been something that was so groundbreaking that you're like, oh, I've never actually thought about that before, and like, thank you for changing my perspective? Like, what's a book that's done that for you, you know? I will say I have a couple books on my TBR that might do it for me. I Who Have Never Known Men, I've tried to read that one a lot, but I don't know if that will actually tell me anything new, because I know that one is women fiction, and I feel like when I read it, I'm gonna be like, yeah, it might be something that I've never read before, but it kind of be something that I already knew in terms of perspective of women, you know? I feel like reading more books about different sexualities, even though I already knew it, it's kind of nice to read about different sexualities other than my own, because it gives me a perspective of how different everybody might be, even if they identify the same. And the same goes for disability representation. When I read a book that has a disabled main character or features a disability, I'm like, oh, I've actually never heard of this disability before. And it's always interesting to see how different authors portray it. Do you have any reading quirks? So I'm the type of person who, when I read, I can't actually do the whole music in the background thing. I can't actually have any music playing because I'm gonna get distracted by the words. And the same goes for instrumentals. I can't actually read a book and have instrumentals playing in the background because I'm so distracted by the music that I'm like not paying attention to anything that's on screen. When I read, I want one of two things. There needs to be a TV show in the background or some YouTube playing on the background that I've already seen. Lately, YouTube can't do it because it's like new content coming on, or it's like bookish content, and I always want to pay attention to it. My go-to background noise used to always be Shadowhunters, the TV show. When Shadowhunters is on, oh, I ain't paying attention to nothing because I've already seen the entire series like 12 times. So I'm not really paying attention to nothing. I can fly through a book with Shadowhunters in the background. I kind of can do that with Teen Wolf, but not really, because I haven't seen all Teen Wolf, and eventually when it gets to the season that I'm on, then I want to pay attention. The same goes for Brooklyn Nine-Nine, even though I've seen majority of Brooklyn Nine-Nine, except for maybe like the last 2 to 3 seasons. But I can't actually listen to Brooklyn Nine-Nine in the background either because I'm gonna get distracted because it's funny. So anything that's gonna distract me, I can't listen to it. So I either need a show that I'm like, oh, I know everything and it's not really that distracting, like Shadowhunters, or I need complete silence. Like I can actually sit here in complete silence and read a book all day. I don't know if that's insane behavior or not, but I can do it. And I've done it several times this week actually. Or the last month or so, that's kind of been my go-to, complete silence. Just listening to the air conditioning and the noise outside. I don't dog ear my pages because I find that completely so super annoying, to be honest with you. I love that we have bookmarks, so I like to use my bookmarks, or I just remember what page I'm on. But I don't like dog earing the page or anything like that. One or multiple POVs, opinion on third person. So actually, I come from the era of people who were reading books on AO3 and Wattpad, okay? And Tumblr and the occasional Twitter thread. I did not know people were writing books in first person until I started reading published books. And that's not to say I never came across of it and I was like, oh, and then I just kind of exit off of it. But I didn't know it was such a popular thing until I started reading like actual published books. And I'm like, oh, people actually do this. Like, this is a thing. I've always thought people just wrote in third person. Like, the whole first person thing was kind of new to me. And this might sound dumb, but I'm like, maybe in school, I can't even say that because a lot of the books that we read in school were third person. Unless it was like one of those nonfiction books, like You Were Publicly Shamed. That's in first person, but that's because it's a self-help book talking to me. That's what I thought it was about. But no, when it's like I see that as self-insert a lot of the time. Like, I knew first person existed, but I just didn't know it expanded to what it is now, to where like almost all books are written in first person and multiple POV. The multiple POV thing was also kind of like, oh, okay. Like even Game of Thrones is multiple POV, but it's written in third person. And I'm like, oh, that's okay, because I'm so used to third person that you kind of barely notice so many switching paths. Like you notice, but it's kind of like you taking in stride. I don't know, the first person thing is just kind of interesting with how much people didn't realize that majority of books used to be written in third person. I've gotten used to first person and multiple POVs now, but I still prefer third person. That's just my preference. I'm not a self-insert girly, and so I've never been the I type of thing. And then also, I recently read a book that was in second person, and I was like, oh, this is interesting. Didn't know they were doing this too. Like, I've only ever seen that, and this just may be my fanfic girl brain, you know? But I've only ever seen that in self-insert books, you know? And that's never been my jam. Like when I read a book, I don't see myself inside the book, whether that's multiple POV or third person or whatever. I don't ever see myself in a character, and maybe that's why I don't have a lot of characters who I'm like, oh, that's me. I don't ever self-insert myself into these things. I'm always reading a book objectively, in my opinion. Personally, I prefer third person. I don't mind multiple POVs because sometimes it is needed. I do like when maybe the whole book is written in one perspective and you get the last chapter in a second perspective. That was one thing I did like about Fourth Wing. Like the whole book is from Violet's perspective, and then the last chapter you get Xaden's perspective, and I'm like, oh yeah, I see, this is what I needed. Now everything makes sense, you know? How do you rate books? So I have my rating system on my Goodreads account, and that kind of breaks down how I do my book ratings. Starting at 5, that's absolute perfection. No notes, got nothing to change. Is perfect, which is why I don't have a lot of them. Do I believe in perfection? I have a friend who would probably say no. I don't believe in perfection, quote unquote, but it exists sometimes. 4 stars is a book that's like almost there. Like you almost had it. Like you could have been a 5-star if you had changed this one thing, you know? And most of the times that's kind of where I find the best writing is in those 4 stars, or a book that just hits like a real good sweet spot. If they do my trope right, there's probably a good chance that I rate it a 3.5 or a 4-star. But those 4 stars are kind of just like, you miss just the mark of perfection for me. Sometimes that's just due to pacing. It could just be too much smut. It could be anything that I felt was like, okay, girl, let's move it on. Or it could have been like, you didn't have enough. Like if I had a little bit more, maybe. Those 4 stars are what I would most likely probably recommend, you know? 3 stars is where I have the biggest range. I have a lot of books that are rated from 3 to just about 4. A 3-star could be like, oh, this is good, this is great, I'd read this again, you know, I'd recommend this to somebody if they were looking for something to read. This was a good book. Or it could be like, that was okay. It wasn't great, but it wasn't terrible. It was a 3-star, like it was solid. A 2-star is something that I was just like, man, I finished you, but did I enjoy you? And I probably wouldn't reread these books again. But I do have some 2.5s where I did finish them, and I'm just like, I finished them because I could get through it, but I could have also just not. And that's what a 2-star is. A 1-star is like, I finished you, but why? Why did I do that to myself? I could have just put you down. I didn't need to do that. This is most likely should have been a DNF. A DNF is something I'm just like, no, I actually could go my whole life without reading this book. That's kind of harsh. I would say a DNF is just something I'm just like, I don't even have the will to keep going. Like I have no interest in learning what happens next. Those are all of my bookish questions, but if y'all want to know anything else, let me know. But remember to like, comment, and subscribe, and I will see you guys next time.